All right, get ready because today we are diving deep into the science of love.
Deep dive is right.
You know that feeling, right? That heart racing, can't eat, can't sleep, can't think straight kind of love. We all want to know what's the deal with that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, lucky for us, we've got research coming out of our ears, psychology journals, pop science articles, the whole shebang. We are going to break down Love 101.
Love 101, I like it.
And, I know you're interested in the romantic side of things, which we will definitely get into. But get this, a lot of these brain responses we are going to be talking about, they actually apply to other parts of your life, too.
It's true, yeah.
Pretty wild stuff.
Wild is a good word for it because, honestly, we're talking about a biological drive here. Like, this is as essential as needing food or water. Those poets, they weren't exaggerating. Love really is a force of nature.
Okay, so you're telling me it is literally hardwired into us to crave connection. It's not something we just learned from, like Disney movies or love songs. It's
Right.
actually a biological drive.
It's primal.
Wow. So where do we even begin with the science of love?
Well, we've got to give credit to Dr. Helen Fisher. Her research uncovered 3 distinct stages of love. So you know that initial spark, that almost instinctual pull towards someone?
Yeah.
That's stage 1, lust. Blame it on testosterone and estrogen. Hormones working overtime to, like, grab your attention.
Okay, makes sense. You got to start somewhere, but then what? It's not all hormones and fleeting glances, right?
Definitely not, no. Stage 2 is where it starts to feel like all those classic love songs. This is attraction, the heart skipping a beat, butterflies in your stomach stage. And this is where dopamine, norepinephrine, and even phenylethylamine, they come in. Basically, your brain's reward system is having a field day. It's showering you with euphoria and excitement.
Ah, so that's the science behind those first date jitters. Our brain is basically saying, like, this is awesome, more please.
Exactly. It's nature's way of making sure we stick around long enough to, well,
Keep the species going.
keep the species going, yeah. And here's the kicker. This isn't just a human thing. Studies show that mammals, in general, experience similar chemical reactions in their brains during mating. It's like we're all just, wired to connect.
Okay, well, that makes those awkward first date stories a little easier to swallow, I guess. It's not just us humans out here overcomplicating things. But what happens when those initial fireworks fade? Does our brain just go, okay, we're good here, and just like go back to normal?
That's where things get really interesting. Stage 3, this is attachment, which is all about building lasting bonds.
Oh,
Now, oxytocin, you might know this as the cuddle hormone, takes center stage, along with vasopressin. These guys, they play a huge role in social bonding and even protective behaviors.
so we're transitioning from fleeting infatuation to actual long-haul love. That's so interesting. And what's so fascinating is you said this cuddle hormone shows up in other types of love, too. It's not just romantic love, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Remember how we talked about love being a biological drive, like thirst or hunger?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that this drive for connection, it isn't limited to just finding a mate. Oxytocin, that cuddle hormone we talked about,
Yeah.
it's actually a key player in all sorts of love. The bond between family members, the warmth between close friends, even the deep connection you feel with your pet.
Hold on. You're telling me the same stuff that's making me weak in the knees for a certain someone is also surging through me when I'm like snuggling with my dog?
You got it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not just anecdotal. Researchers actually measured oxytocin levels in both dogs and their owners while they looked into each other's eyes. Guess what?
Wives?
Both the dogs and humans had huge spikes in oxytocin.
Okay, that is adorable science. And maybe explains why I feel the need to stare deeply into my dog's eyes for like unreasonable amount of time. But seriously, that's amazing. So it's not just about like feeling good. It's like this connection is doing something positive for us on a physical level too.
Exactly. Strong social connections, whether it's with a partner, a friend, a family member, or, yeah, even a furry companion, they're linked to lower stress levels, better cardiovascular health, even a stronger immune system. It's like a built-in health system just waiting to be activated.
I am starting to think love really is the best medicine. We're just getting started on this deep dive into the science of love. We've covered the stages, the hormones, and even hinted at how this drive for connection shows up in other areas of our lives. But we've got way more to uncover, so stick around. We'll be right back after a quick break.
You know, it really is fascinating how our bodies are wired for connection. We've been talking about oxytocin and, like, its role in bonding. But there's another fascinating angle to this whole love and health connection. Remember those passions we mentioned earlier, like the hobbies, the interests that light us up?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? They seem to activate similar brain regions as those involved in love.
What?
It's almost as if our brains don't distinguish between loving a person and loving an activity.
Wait, are you serious? So that feeling of being like head over heels for a new hobby, like when I first took up pottery, that's not just a figure of speech. My brain is actually showing similar activity as someone who's falling in love.
You got it. And it gets even more interesting. Remember Sternberg's triangular theory of love?
Yeah.
Intimacy, passion, commitment. Those principles apply not just to romantic love, but also to those fulfilling passions in our lives.
Okay, you're blowing my mind here. Explain this to me. How does this love triangle, like, translate to someone who's super passionate about their art, or even like a diehard marathon runner?
Okay, think about it. Intimacy in this context is about feeling deeply connected to the activity itself. It's about losing yourself in the creative flow of painting or the rhythm of running. You lose track of time. You're completely engrossed. That's intimacy with your passion.
Okay. And passionate, well, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Is like the excitement, the drive to improve, the feeling of being like totally absorbed in the moment. But commitment, that's where it gets interesting for me. Because let's face it, like sticking with something, whether it's a relationship or a marathon training schedule, it takes work.
Exactly.
Commitment, whether to a person or a passion, requires effort, dedication, showing up even when things get tough. Think about the artist who pushes through creative blocks, or the runner who laces up their shoes even when it's pouring rain. That's commitment in action. And it's fueled by those same neural pathways involved in maintaining strong relationships.
Wow, this totally changes the game. It's not just about romantic love. It's about cultivating those deep connections in all areas of our lives. It's about finding that sweet spot of intimacy, passion, and commitment, whether it's with a partner, pet, a cause we believe in, or even like ourselves. Now you're getting it. It's about recognizing that fundamental human need for connection and embracing all the different ways it can manifest in our lives.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that when we nurture those connections, when we invest in love in all its forms, we're not just enriching our own lives, but creating a ripple effect of positivity that spreads outward.
I love that. But let's be real, it's not always easy to maintain that like positive outlook. We've been talking about like the upside of love, but we've all experienced the flip side too, right? Heartbreak, loss, those like messier, more painful parts of the human experience. What does science have to say about those moments when love gets messy?
Yeah, it's true. Love isn't always sunshine and roses. And you're right. Science actually has a lot to say about heartbreak. Remember how we talked about the brain's reward system being activated in love?
Yeah.
Well, when we experience loss or heartbreak, that same system can go a bit haywire, leaving us, feeling like we're going through withdrawal.
Wait, are you saying heartbreak is like literally going cold turkey from a drug? No wonder it feels so awful.
In a way, yes. The brain doesn't necessarily distinguish between physical and emotional pain. So when we lose someone we love, whether it's through a breakup, a death, or even just a falling out, our brains interpret that loss as a threat to our survival. It's a primal response.
Wow, so our brains are basically throwing a tantrum. That explains a lot about why heartbreak can feel so debilitating.
It's not a tantrum, exactly, but it is a powerful reaction. This primal response, it triggers a flood of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are responsible for those classic symptoms of heartbreak: the racing heart, loss of appetite, the inability to sleep. Your body is mirroring the emotional turmoil you're feeling.
So there's actually a neurological basis for the whole, like, time heals all wounds thing. It's not just a cliche.
Not at all. Each time we experience love, loss, or even just, a change in a relationship, our brains are creating new neural pathways. It's like building a mental map of our emotional landscape. And the more experiences we have, the more intricate and resilient that map becomes. It takes time, but your brain is constantly adapting and rewiring itself.
Okay, that's actually a really helpful way to think about it. It's not about erasing the past or forgetting those painful experiences, but rather about integrating them into the overall story of our lives. But how do we do that? How do we actually move through those difficult emotions in a healthy way? So it's not about like avoiding those tough emotions, but learning to navigate them and understanding that our brains are actually wired to bounce back eventually.
Exactly. And that's where self-care, social support, even professional help can be so important.
Yeah.
Just like you wouldn't hesitate to see a doctor for physical injury, it's crucial to prioritize our emotional well-being, especially during, times of stress or loss.
It's like we've been talking about this whole episode, leaning into that need for connection, right? We're not meant to go through like this thing called life alone.
Absolutely. And sometimes that means seeking guidance from a therapist or counselor. They can help us process those complex emotions and develop healthy coping mechanisms.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've gone from like the butterflies of new love to the tough stuff like heartbreak, and even how this whole love thing applies to our passions. Like, who knew?
And through it all, one thing remains clear. Love, in all its forms, is essential to living a full and healthy life.
I totally agree. But before we wrap up, can we circle back to something you said earlier? You mentioned our brains don't necessarily distinguish between loving a person and loving an activity. I've been thinking about that all episode.
Ah, yes. That's a really important point. And it ties into the bigger picture of everything we've been discussing today. Love isn't just about finding the one and checking that box. It's about discovering those sparks of passion, intimacy, and commitment in all corners of our lives.
So it's about saying yes to those things that like light us up, whether it's a romantic relationship, a fulfilling hobby, a cause we believe in, or even just like deepening the connection we have with ourselves.
You nailed it. It's about actively choosing to show up with love in our everyday lives.
Love as an active practice. I love that. Okay, so for our listener out there who maybe needed to hear this today, what's one thing they can do to like tap into this love-powered superpower we've been talking about?
We often think of love as something that happens to us. But what if we approached it as something we cultivate from within? Start small. Take a walk in nature and really be present. Call a friend and tell them you appreciate them. Make time for that hobby you're passionate about. Even just taking a few minutes for yourself to relax and recharge can be an act of self-love.
It's about those small, everyday moments that like add up to something much bigger, right?
Exactly. Love isn't just a feeling, it's an action. It's a choice we make every single day to approach ourselves, each other, and the world around us with open hearts.
This deep dive has been incredible. We've learned that love isn't just some whimsical emotion, it's a fundamental force, deeply intertwined with our biology, our brains, our well-being.
And the best part is, it's a resource we all have access to, regardless of relationship status or anything else going on in our lives.
So, listener, as we wrap up this deep dive on the science of love, remember to get out there and spread that love. Your brain will thank you for it.